on what is life, a scientific and Vedantic perspective. So, before going to actual topic, we need to understand why we need to understand this question, what is life? So, according to a New Scientist magazine, there are 10 unanswered questions that are there are 10 unanswered questions in science about life. What are those 10 unanswered questions? Number one is, how did life begin and how many species are there? Are we still evolving? Why do we sleep? Is intelligence inevitable? What is consciousness? What is sex for? Can we prevent aging? What is life? Is there any life in other planets? So these are the top 10 unanswered questions, and still science is working on it, and then we are not getting answers to it. So in this presentation, we are going to focus on only two major questions here. How did life begin and what is life? To answer these two questions from the scientific perspective, so we need to understand, so these four questions of science, they are the modern concepts or molecular concepts of life. That is chemical evolution life? Is the DNA molecule life? Is the genomics life? Is the RNA molecule life? So if you see here, this is chemical evolution life. So here we all know that there is a Big Bang theory which we strongly believe from since many years, like the universe formed from 13 to 15 billion years ago, and Earth was formed around 4.5 billion years ago, and life began 3.5 billion years ago. But how that life began at that time, nobody knows. So, if you simply define the life and the matter is a simple lower order organization, and life is a higher order organization. So now, so how to answer this question that how life began from the lower order organization? So let us see what the chemical evolution says about it. So for in the chemical evolution of life, there are majorly three assumptions for this chemical evolution of life. The first assumption is like the hypothetical primitive atmosphere on this earth must have been either reducing or neutral environment. That means there was no oxygen at that time. And in that reducing environment, the simple molecules like amino acids, which are the parts of our proteins, and purines, pyrimidines, which are part of our DNA and RNA, and also sugars that were formed within this reducing atmosphere under the action of ultraviolet radiation, electrical discharges, radioactivity, and thermal energy, and so on. And the third assumption is once these molecules are formed, then these molecules gave rise to a protoproteins, the primary proteins, and also protonucleic acids and other protocellular components. So which later on turn into the so-called protocells and finally to living cells. So these are the three assumptions that was the basis for chemical evolution of life. And for that, to believe these three assumptions, the support has come from the Stanley Miller's experiment of synthesis of amino acids. What Stanley Miller has done that he took a boiling water and also he took some mixture of the gases like ammonia, methane, hydrogen, and also water at 80 degrees centigrade and provided some electrodes and electrical spark. So by this experiments, he found that there are certain amino acids that can be synthesized. On the basis of this, so chemical evolution was believed that the molecules can be synthesized at the reducing atmosphere. But is it true? So what the other evidences say? So according to him, there must be some reducing atmosphere, and in that atmosphere, all these molecules could have been synthesized. But there are some contradictory facts for this. The available data from geology, geophysics, and geochemistry, those data say that there was no evidence for the reducing atmosphere. So, how they are telling this? So, if you see that irradiating, highly reducing atmosphere that produces hydrophobic organic molecules. Once these molecules are produced, they should be absorbed on the sedimentary clays. But the earliest rocks, they didn't show such an evidence. Then the theoretical calculation also says that dissociation of water vapor by ultraviolet light must have generated enough oxygen in the history of the earth to create an oxidizing atmosphere. So what I wanted to say is the basic assumption of this reducing atmosphere is not clear. Even this was told by even Stanley Miller himself that we really do not know what the Earth was like 3 or 4 billion years ago. So there are all sorts of theories and speculations. The major uncertainty concerns what the atmosphere was like. This is the major area of dispute. Even the one who started this experiment, he himself is telling that we don't know what was the atmosphere on the Earth at that time. So the next question from the molecular aspects of life is the DNA molecule life? So we know a lot about the DNA, and then people they are doing cloning also, manipulating DNA on several aspects. There are so many things, but still there is a big gap between the DNA and complete functioning of a cell. So in the even after genomics era and present omics era also, there is a big gap to understand the complete functioning of a cell. So what we do, basically scientists, they assume the cell is a machine and all the reactions they are running according to simple push and pull laws. And this assumption is also a kind of faith. So that was the faith, the basis for the systems biology, where we already read that lot of molecules together, and then we apply simple the push and pull laws and try to understand the function of a cell. So apart from these laws, there is a quite possible that other laws are also involved in the operation of cells that are unknown to modern chemistry. So we don't know what are the other laws as from the scientific point of view. So then how we can say still DNA is the molecule of life? So at present, if you see the present scientific advancements, there are many experimental techniques are available, many tools are available to synthesize most of the chemicals which we already found in the living cell, like proteins, hormones, lipids, and all. But still, we are unable to synthesize any synthetic living cell in the test tube. So even in our lab also, we do exosomes work, we do the protocells work, but they are not the complete cell. So finally, what I wanted to say is a gene or DNA is not the life. If you isolate DNA and keep it outside, and that particular DNA is not just a kind of material, but not the actually a living cell. So what I wanted to say here is that even DNA is not alive. Protein is not alive. Sugar molecule is not alive. Indeed, a mixture of all various biomolecules is also will never become alive. So this is also endorsed by another Nobel laureate in chemistry, that is, he's a Hungarian biochemist, that is Szent Kairogi. And what he was telling that in my search for the secret of life, I ended up with atoms and electrons which have no life at all. So even electrons, atoms, they are not life molecules. They are just an atoms, materials. So somewhere along the line, life has run out through my fingers. So in my old days, I am now retracing things. So this is what he is telling. So next, coming to the next question, though what the previous question says the DNA is not sufficient to define what is life. So let's see, is the combination of entire DNA, the total chromosomes, that's the genome, can we explain now whether the genome is a life? So if we all know that the human genome, it has been completed in 2003, can we answer now what is life? So you can see the two identical genomes. Two identical genome means two identical DNA is present, especially this is present in the twins. So two twins, if you take, their DNA is almost same. I mean, not almost, completely DNA is same. But on the top of DNA, there are certain chemical changes which causes some of the differences. So even the two identical genomes that they have different personalities. So we cannot say complete genome, it can explain the complete life. So what happened in the last 50 years, we have filled in huge details about living systems and can manipulate their bodily structures in many astonishing ways. But we still do not know what the life is. This is our state from the scientific perspective. So the last question from the molecular aspects of life is the RNA life? So if you see why people are believing RNA is life, because RNA also has another property called as enzymatic activities. So what scientists believe that there is a RNA that is self-replicating and it also has enzymatic activities. That's why the RNA might have been erased first and then the DNA and proteins would have been added later. Later, the DNA could have been evolved from RNA and then being more stable because it's a double stranded, the DNA is a double stranded, then it has taken over RNA's role as a guardian of heredity. So this was the belief, and then many experiments they say this initially, but still we don't know whether RNA is the main fundamental origin of life. Why I'm telling this one? If you see the typical RNA structure, it has the sugar that is ribose. So whenever we work on RNA, even in our labs also, we take a lot of precautions that RNA will be highly degraded immediately. So if you take this kind of ribose in the RNA, the ribose is a sugar that is part of the backbone of RNA molecule. It's difficult to create in hypothetical early Earth conditions, except in small quantities. Even Stanley Miller also said the same. The ribose and other sugars have surprisingly short half-lives for decomposition at neutral pH, making it very unlikely that sugars were available as prebiotic reagents. So, in addition to that, these RNA molecules are highly sensitive, they degrade very quickly. So is RNA life. Again, if you see the statement of Francis Crick, who got the Nobel Prize along with Watson for the finding of DNA, not finding, the explaining the model, DNA double helix model. And here what he said, you can see, at present, the gap from the primal soup to the first RNA system capable of natural selection looks forbiddingly wide. So he is telling still we don't know a lot of things about RNA and life. And he is one of the famous scientists and also Nobel laureate, that is Werner Arber, is a molecular biologist. So he was also telling that although as a biologist, I must confess that I do not understand how life came about. To me, autoreplication of a macromolecule, that means DNA, doesn't yet represent life. Even a viral particle, I mean, the macromolecule which is auto-replicating either DNA or RNA, anything nucleic acid, even a viral molecule is not a live organism. It can only participate in life processes. So life could be beyond the assembly of molecules. That is the conclusion of scientific perspective, that life could be beyond the assembly of molecules. So it cannot clearly explain what the life is and then how life came. So let's see some other molecular aspects, whether these molecular mechanisms can explain the marvels or mysteries of life. You can see there are some of the marvels or mystical facts of life. So what are those things? If you see any beautiful landscape, suddenly we feel very happy. And also when you listen a melodious symphony orchestra, then also we feel very happy. So what is the molecular operation for this? Likewise, when we feel joy upon seeing a close friend or relative, after a long time. So, what's the molecular operation? If you know each and every systems biology, or if you know every biochemical pathways, can we explain these things? So, we can't. So, another important thing is what are the molecular operations that makes Pacific Northwest salmon, this is a fish, and undertake the mysterious and dramatic odyssey of swimming hundreds of miles upstream in the face of many obstacles just to spawn and then die. So, what's the molecular mechanism for this? And simple mother's unique love and care for child. What is the molecular mechanism? Many scientists can argue that an oxytocin hormone is responsible for that. But if you delete oxytocin also, can we explain complete mother's unique love in this case? We can't. So likewise, you can see what makes a squirrel sense its ability to jump from one branch of a tall pine tree to another with perfect timing and accuracy. Like crocodile, if you see that what enables the Nile crocodile, whose jaws can crush the femur of a buffalo, to pick up its egg gently enough and roll it between the jaws, freeing the hatching without harming it. So, what's the molecular mechanism for this? If science can explain all the things, it should explain this kind of mystical facts also. And what is that molecular operation which makes the cuckoo lay its eggs in the nests of other birds as a meaningful trick? So, these things science cannot explain completely. So, what will happen if you strongly believe in scientific perspective only? So, that leads to certain implications that we can see even in the life of Charles Darwin. So, what he's telling is, but now for many years, I can't endure to read a line of poetry. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. So I have also almost lost my taste for pictures or music. The loss of these tastes is a loss of happiness and may possibly be injurious to the intellect and more probably to the moral character by enfeebling the emotional part of our nature. So everything is not molecular biology or everything is not like chemical evolution. So whatever people thought that. So finally, after believing all these facts, even the great scientists like Charles Darwin that become dull. So that is the scientific perspective on the original nature of life. So let's see what are the other laws that are beyond these material laws. So if you see this, the laws beyond the material laws of nature, the first thing is we all know that scientific theories they deal in practice with relative descriptions of nature. Meaning is most of our experiments we do on the basis of relative descriptions of nature rather than the understanding the exact reality. It's all relative. So, the goal of any science has always been to seek out the ultimate principles of underlying reality. So, the reality is like the dominant scientific view of the past 200 years has been that these ultimate principles consist of few basic natural laws that can be expressed by mathematical formulas. Okay, thank you. So, the dominant view of many scientific, what is the scientific view is like all the ultimate principles, whatever we are going to study, that have to be expressed by mathematical formulas. So, science belief is the measuring of anything. So, for measurement of anything, those things should be in the mathematical formulas. But if you see that in any cell, any living cell, there are 200 trillion of the molecules. And all these molecules, they execute thousands of coordinated reactions with precise timing and function. So how it's happening? So what makes a living cell perform all these seemingly purposeful chemical reactions? And what are the chemical theories or principles that can explain such apparently conscious acts. All these reactions are the conscious acts, even at a molecular level. So, what is the wave function that can explain such a phenomena like these 200 trillion molecules in a single cell and how they are acting together in a conscious way? So, there is an answer from the Vedantic perspective or Vedantic paradigm. So, according to the Vedantic paradigm, the ultimate cause of all the phenomena, that including life, is the absolute truth. So there is an absolute truth, and that absolute truth has certain features. So, what are the features for this absolute truth? These are the features for the absolute truth. The number one is the absolute truth exists, but it is not fully conceivable to human mind. So, this feature is accepted by both modern science also and also Vedantic perspective too. And then it exists invariably throughout the space. So both schools accept this. It doesn't change with time. This is also accepted by both the schools. And it controls and is the source of all manifestations. So the Vedantic paradigm accepts this, and also material, the education or modern science also accepts this to some extent. Then this another feature of this absolute truth is it exists as a unified whole. So the modern science doesn't accept this, and Vedantic paradigm accepts this. It possesses the attribute of consciousness. So the consciousness is the fundamental feature of the absolute truth, and it is accepted by Vedantic paradigm, but not modern science. And it corresponds to the fixed mathematical expression. The modern science thinks that, yeah, it has to be in a mathematical expression, but Vedantic perspective doesn't agree for that. So the perception of absolute truth is limited to matter and material energy only. But Vedantic paradigm is a fundamental feature of the absolute truth, and all the basic laws and principles of nature are seen to be integrated into harmonious whole within the awareness of absolute consciousness. So such absolute truth exists as one unified sentient being, which appears to be a lie outside the realm of experimental observation. So what does it mean? It means that there is a consciousness is a fundamental feature of absolute truth, and all the basic laws, whatever the scientific principles and everything, they are integrated into that absolute truth. And this absolute truth exists as one unified sentient being, and which appears to be lie outside the realm of experimental observation. So the scientists they don't believe in this. So higher order of laws are actually psychological in nature and do not fit sensibly in the mathematical framework. So the absolute truth, as per the Vedantic perspective or the Vedantic paradigm, it is the source for both the material energy, that is inferior energy, as well as the superior spiritual energy. So the material energy meaning is that all gross elements like earth, water, fire, air, ether, and according to Ayurveda, our body is made up of all these things. And also the subtle elements are mind, intelligence, and false ego. And these are the inferior material energy, and the superior material energy is the spiriton or soul. The spiriton has three important features. That is the Sat, it's a full of eternity, and Chit, full of knowledge, and Ananda, full of bliss. So, how these two are related to the life? Let's see that. So, the material energy that's initially called as unmanifested primordial matter are sum total of all material elements. That's called as Pradhan. And from this Pradhan, the manifestation of cosmic universe came, that is Mahatattva. And from there, the subtle energies, that is Sattva, Raja, and Tamagunas, they came. And then there is a gross material manifestation, that is the quarks, electrons, atoms, molecules, whole set of periodic table of elements. They all came out from this. So this is the material energy. Our science actually deals with the material energy, but not with the life. So what is life then? The life is a spiriton. That is, the spiriton is a fundamental spiritual particular life. Once the spirit enters into the material, any material things, then life comes. So the spiriton, it is the quantum of life, and it exists in unlimited numbers, cannot be created or destroyed. That's follows the conservation principle, and possess the properties of consciousness and free will. So these are the main properties of spiriton, and spiriton also has personality. So once the spiriton enters into material things, then the life starts. So the true science of the life is beyond the realm of material science, and biology deals with interaction of spiriton and matter. So we all think that we are studying about DNA, RNA, proteins, and all the things, how they are functioning. But actually, we are studying the interactions of spiriton and matter, and we just generally focus on the matter. So modern science believes that spiriton is an emergent product of evolution of matter, but actually it is other way around, which is not correct as per the Vedanta. So what Vedantic viewpoint on life is, it's a combination of living being is a genome plus mind and intelligence and false ego and spiriton or soul. So genome here, my meaning is the physical or material body, and mind, intelligence, and false ego are the subtle matters, the subtle body, and spiriton or soul are the spiritual life particle. So without spiritual life particle, there is no life. So once the soul is the main thing, once it is, it also possesses the property of the consciousness, then it regulates the intelligence of a cell, and then the mind of a cell or mind of a body, and then the senses are regulated by mind, and then senses regulates the human body. So the topmost thing is soul, and then which regulates intelligence. Intelligence regulates the mind regulates the senses, and senses regulates the human gross body. So the answer to the life has come from Vedantic perspective, but not from scientific perspective. So what Vedantic perspective is that the superior spiritual energy or spiriton or soul that makes the inferior energy, which is a material energy, to appear as a living being. So this, because of the spiriton, the life has certain properties. Those properties, the molecular explanation cannot explain these properties. These are the consciousness and free will. Because of these properties, the life has certain other qualities. They are the tolerance, honesty, love, sacrifice, humility, self-control, and responsibility. All these qualities, there is no molecular mechanism for this. It's because of the spirit we are getting all these qualities. So what is the aim of life? Because we are, Vedanta says that because of spirit on the life has come, that means that life should have certain aim. So what are that aim is that Sat, Chit, and Ananda. That means the spirit should have or should strive for full of eternity, full of knowledge, full of unlimited happiness. That's the bliss. So to achieve, so the aim of the life is to achieve the natural state of soul. So at this stage, consciousness is fully bloomed. So once our spirit or spiriton attains to its natural state, like having Sat, Chit, and Ananda, then our consciousness is fully bloomed. So how to do this? The thing is, what is the process to be applied to reach to that level? That is the science of self-realization, or science of understanding spiriton, or science of knowing who actually I am. So according to the Vedantic model of evolution of consciousness, all our living organisms can be classified into these categories. The first thing is that trees and plants, they are considered as they have the covered consciousness. Then the animals like worms, insects, and animals, they have the shrunken consciousness. And human beings, we have the budding consciousness because we can ask the questions, who am I? And then whoever asks this kind of questions about absolute truth and spiriton, and they will have bloomed consciousness. And finally, the self-realized souls, they have the fully bloomed consciousness. So the conclusion of life in Vedanta, in a scientific way, even Vedanta is explains in a scientific way only, but not the modern scientific perspective. But it is also explaining the science. It is all science is basically systematic understanding. So Vedanta is also telling in a systematic understanding, the life comes from life. That means the spiriton comes from the super soul, and spiriton, once it is a non-material spiritual particle which makes the matter into alive, and then spiriton has the two important features or qualities, you can say, that is a consciousness and free will. This is the fundamental property of spiritual particle or spiriton. So with that, the aim of life is the path of self-realization, or to become the stage of Sat Chit and Anand, or to achieve the stage of ultimate happiness. So with that, I thank you, the Bhaktivedanta Institute Karnal chapter, for giving me this opportunity to present and share this particular presentation of what is life. Thank you.